No way. Your soulmate told everyone that you are just. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear is a fictional story about two hearts, one hidden truth, and a confession that nobody saw coming. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. There are moments when people say things they never planned to say. Sometimes they speak from anger. Sometimes from fear. But sometimes, when the weight on their heart becomes too heavy, the truth simply slips out before they can stop it. That is exactly where this story begins. Your soulmate had spent so long hiding their emotions that everyone believed they had already moved on. But one unexpected conversation changed everything. It happened on an ordinary evening. Friends were laughing, sharing stories, and talking about relationships, dreams, and the people who had changed their lives. At first, your soulmate remained completely quiet. They smiled politely and tried to change the subject every time someone mentioned love. But the people around them noticed something unusual. Every time your name came up, their expression changed. Their smile became softer. Their eyes drifted into the distance. It was as though they were remembering a chapter of their life they could never truly close. Don't skip. This changes everything. One friend finally asked the question everyone had been thinking. If you had one chance to tell the truth about them, what would you say? The room became completely silent. For several long seconds, your soulmate didn't answer. They looked down at the table, took a slow breath, and quietly whispered words that surprised everyone sitting there. They're just different. Those 3 words sounded simple, yet they carried years of emotion. No one interrupted. No one laughed. They could hear something in your soulmate's voice that could not be faked. It wasn't regret alone. It wasn't longing alone. It was the sound of someone finally admitting that one person had changed their life forever. Listen carefully because something huge is waiting for you. One of their closest friends leaned forward and asked, "Different how?" Your soulmate smiled sadly before answering. They're the kind of person who cared without expecting anything back. They stayed patient when I didn't deserve it. They believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I didn't realize how rare that was until they were no longer beside me. The room fell silent once again. No one had expected such an honest confession. For the first time, your soulmate stopped protecting their pride. They admitted that while everyone else saw only the ending of the relationship, they had never seen everything that happened behind the scenes. They had never seen the quiet sacrifices you made. They had never seen the countless moments when you chose understanding instead of arguments. They had never seen the love you continued giving even when your own heart was hurting. Speaking those truths out loud felt like removing a heavy weight they had carried for far too long. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Another friend asked gently, "If they meant that much to you, why did you let them go?" The question seemed simple, but the answer was not. Your soulmate looked away for a long moment before quietly replying, "Because I confused fear with wisdom. I thought pushing them away would protect me from getting hurt. Instead, I ended up hurting both of us." Their voice trembled, and for the first time, tears filled their eyes without them trying to hide them. Don't skip because this changes everything. Everyone around them expected excuses, but none came. They didn't blame timing. They didn't blame distance. They didn't blame misunderstandings. Instead, they accepted responsibility with complete honesty. They admitted they had taken your kindness for granted. They admitted they assumed your heart would always be there no matter how long they stayed silent. They admitted that only after losing your presence did they truly understand the value of someone who loved with sincerity instead of conditions. One friend quietly smiled and said, "You still love them, don't you?" This time there was no hesitation. No fear. No attempt to avoid the truth. Your soulmate simply nodded. "I never stopped caring," they whispered. "I only stopped admitting it." Those words echoed through the room. No one spoke for several moments because everyone understood they had just witnessed someone choosing honesty over pride. Listen carefully because something huge is waiting for you. After that conversation ended, your soulmate walked outside alone beneath the evening sky. The air was cool, and the streets were almost empty. They looked up at the stars and thought about every moment they had spent pretending they were fine. They realized that pretending had never brought peace. It had only delayed healing. They finally understood that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, always brings more freedom than silence ever can. As they slowly walked home, they remembered something you once said. "One day, you'll understand why honesty matters more than fear." At the time, those words seemed ordinary. Now they felt unforgettable. Every lesson you had tried to teach them had quietly returned at exactly the moment they were finally ready to understand it. My beloved child, stay till the very end because the greatest revelation was not what your soulmate told everyone. It was what they finally admitted to themselves. They realized that you were never just someone in their life. You were the person who taught them the meaning of patience, compassion, loyalty, and authentic love. Whether your paths crossed again or remained separate, your influence would stay with them forever. They finally understood that some people don't simply enter your story, they change the way you see yourself and the way you love for the rest of your life. And as the night quietly came to an end, your soulmate whispered one final sentence that no one in the room will ever forget. "If I could relive one chapter of my life, it wouldn't be to change who they were, it would be to become the person they deserved while I still had the chance." Those words remained in the hearts of everyone who heard them, because they carried a timeless truth: genuine love is never measured by the moments we lose, it is measured by the growth, gratitude, and courage it leaves behind. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because the story did not end with that conversation. In many ways, it had only just begun. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. After leaving that gathering, your soulmate walked through the quiet streets with a heart that felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because they had finally spoken the truth they had been hiding for so long. Heavier because once the truth is spoken aloud, it can never be taken back. Every word they had shared continued echoing in their mind, and for the first time, they realized that honesty carries both freedom and responsibility. When they arrived home, they didn't turn on the television or reach for their phone. Instead, they sat in complete silence. The house felt unusually still, and every quiet corner seemed to remind them of memories they had tried so hard to forget. They remembered the conversations that lasted late into the night, the laughter that appeared when life felt difficult, and the quiet moments when no words were needed because your presence alone brought comfort. Those memories were no longer painful because they were perfect. They were meaningful because they were real. Real moments have a way of staying with us long after time has moved on. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As they sat there reflecting, one sentence from the evening kept repeating in their heart, "They're just different." At first, those words had seemed too small to explain everything they truly felt. The more they thought about them, the more they understood what they had actually meant. You were different because you never tried to change who they were. You encouraged growth without demanding perfection. You listened before judging. You forgave more times than they deserved. You celebrated their victories as though they were your own. In a world where so many people expected something in return, your kindness had always been freely given, and only now did they fully recognize how rare that truly was. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. The next morning, one of the friends from that gathering called them. "I've been thinking about what you said," the friend admitted. "If everything you told us is true, then why are you still letting fear decide what happens next?" The question lingered long after the call ended. They realized that sometimes the people outside our story can see what we are too afraid to face ourselves. Fear had once convinced them that silence was the safest choice. Now they understood that silence had become the greatest obstacle standing between truth and healing. That afternoon, they opened an old notebook they hadn't touched in years. Between its pages were handwritten dreams, forgotten goals, and little reminders they had once written to themselves. On one page, they found a sentence that stopped them completely: "Never lose the people who make you feel like you're becoming the best version of yourself." They stared at those words for several minutes. They couldn't even remember writing them, but now they felt as though their past self had left behind a message for the future. They quietly smiled through tears, realizing they had once understood something their fear later caused them to forget. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Instead of dwelling on regret, they decided to focus on becoming the kind of person who would never repeat the same mistakes. They became more patient with the people around them. They listened more than they spoke. They apologized when they were wrong without searching for excuses. They began treating every relationship with greater care because they had learned how easily valuable connections can be taken for granted. Their growth was no longer motivated by guilt alone. It was motivated by gratitude for the lessons life had given them. Meanwhile, your own journey continued unfolding beautifully. The heartbreak that once felt impossible to carry had quietly transformed into wisdom. You had discovered peace in places where you once searched only for answers. Instead of wondering why everything happened, you began appreciating how much stronger you had become because of it. Your confidence no longer depended on being chosen by someone else. It came from knowing your heart had remained genuine even during life's most difficult chapters. That quiet strength became one of the most inspiring parts of your story. Listen carefully because this changes everything. Your soulmate finally realized that the greatest compliment they had ever given you was not spoken during that gathering. It was revealed through the way your memory continued inspiring them to become a better person long after your paths had changed. Genuine love leaves behind growth. It encourages honesty. It teaches humility. It reminds us that the people who truly matter are never measured by how loudly they enter our lives, but by how deeply they transform our hearts. As another evening arrived, they stepped outside once again and looked toward the fading sunset. This time there was no overwhelming sadness. There was quiet hope. They no longer wanted to rewrite the past. They simply wanted to honor it by living differently. Every lesson they had learned had prepared them for whatever chapter came next. Whether life brought another opportunity to reconnect or simply allowed both of you to continue growing separately, they knew one thing with absolute certainty: your presence had changed them forever, and they would carry that gift with gratitude for the rest of their life. My beloved child, don't skip, because the next chapter will reveal the unexpected conversation that follows after their heartfelt confession reaches someone who never expected to hear those words. That single conversation will challenge everything they thought they knew about love, forgiveness, and second chances, proving once again that the most powerful transformations begin the moment pride steps aside and truth finally takes its place. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this chapter begins with an unexpected turn that no one saw coming. Stay till the end, because what happened next changed everything. A few days had passed since your soulmate's heartfelt confession to their friends. They believed those words would remain within that small circle forever. They had spoken from the heart without expecting anything in return. But life has a mysterious way of allowing truth to travel farther than we imagine. One quiet afternoon, someone who had been present during that conversation reached out to your soulmate and said, "I've been thinking about everything you shared. And I don't think your story is over yet." Those simple words stayed with them for the rest of the day. They couldn't explain why, but something inside them began to shift once again. They realized they had spent so much time looking backward that they had forgotten one important truth: the future is never written by yesterday alone. Every sunrise brings another opportunity to choose differently. Every honest decision creates a new path. They had finally become the kind of person who understood that love is not about controlling another person's heart. It is about showing up with sincerity, accepting responsibility, and respecting whatever choice comes next. Listen carefully. This changes everything. That evening, they opened a small wooden box hidden on the top shelf of their closet. Inside were little reminders of different seasons of life. A concert ticket, a handwritten note, a photograph from years ago, and a few tiny keepsakes that carried memories no one else would understand. As they carefully looked through each item, they smiled through quiet tears. They realized these objects were never valuable because of what they were. They were valuable because they reminded them of who they had become during those moments. Your presence had taught them how to love with patience, how to dream without fear, and how to appreciate ordinary days that once seemed insignificant. Don't skip, because something huge is waiting for you. Later that night, they met the same group of friends again. This time the conversation felt different. No one joked about relationships. No one changed the subject. Instead, one friend looked directly at them and asked, "If you could describe them in one sentence today, what would you say?" Without hesitation, your soulmate smiled and quietly answered, "They are the reason I finally learned that real love begins with honesty." The room became completely silent. No one expected such a simple sentence to carry so much emotion. One friend gently nodded and replied, "Then maybe the greatest gift they gave you wasn't the relationship itself. Maybe it was helping you become someone who finally understands what genuine love looks like." Those words settled deeply into your soulmate's heart. They realized that every difficult chapter had been preparing them for this exact understanding. Sometimes people enter our lives to stay forever. Sometimes they enter to change us forever. Either way, the love shared is never meaningless when it leaves us wiser than before. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. After returning home, they stood in front of the mirror for a long time. They looked into their own eyes and noticed something that hadn't been there before. The fear was gone. The constant regret had softened into gratitude. The person staring back at them was no longer running from difficult emotions. They were finally ready to face life with openness instead of hesitation. It wasn't because every problem had disappeared. It was because they had learned that peace comes from accepting the truth rather than avoiding it. Meanwhile, your own life continued moving forward in beautiful ways. You had discovered new goals, new dreams, and a stronger sense of purpose. The pain that once felt impossible to carry had become part of your wisdom instead of your identity. You had learned to protect your peace while still keeping your heart kind. Every challenge had quietly prepared you to recognize healthy love built on mutual respect rather than fear or uncertainty. Without even realizing it, you had become an inspiration to those around you simply by refusing to let heartbreak define your future. Listen carefully because this changes everything. At that very same moment, your soulmate understood something they had never truly understood before. They realized that love is not measured by how loudly someone says, "I love you." It is measured by the quiet choices they make every single day. Choosing honesty instead of excuses. Choosing accountability instead of blame. Choosing growth instead of comfort. Choosing gratitude instead of resentment. Those daily choices create the kind of love that survives life's greatest storms. As another sunrise slowly approached, they stood outside watching the first light appear across the horizon. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, and for the first time in years, they felt completely at peace with whatever tomorrow might bring. They no longer feared uncertainty because they had finally become someone who trusted the journey itself. Whether life offered another chance to reconnect or simply allowed each of you to continue growing separately, they knew your story had already given them something priceless, a heart capable of loving with greater wisdom than ever before. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the unexpected moment when paths that once separated begin moving toward one another again. Not through coincidence or fantasy, but through honest conversations, personal growth, and the courage to face the future without pretending to be someone you're not. Sometimes the most extraordinary endings begin with one ordinary decision, choosing truth over fear. And that decision is about to open a door neither of you ever imagined possible. The secret they could no longer hide. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the chapter where everything begins to unfold in ways no one expected. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The days continued to pass, yet something inside your soulmate refused to settle. They had already admitted the truth to their friends. They had already accepted their mistakes. They had already faced the regrets they once spent years avoiding. But deep in their heart, they knew there was still one final truth they had never spoken aloud. It was a truth they had hidden not because it wasn't real, but because admitting it would mean letting go of the last piece of pride they still carried. One quiet evening, they found themselves sitting alone in a small cafe they used to visit whenever life became overwhelming. The rain tapped gently against the windows while people hurried past outside, each person carrying their own story, their own dreams, and their own struggles. They watched strangers laugh together, families share meals, and old friends reconnect after years apart. Suddenly, they realized something that completely changed their perspective. Life never waits for perfect timing. It simply keeps moving forward, inviting every heart to decide whether it will live with courage or remain trapped by fear. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As they stirred their untouched cup of coffee, an elderly man sitting nearby smiled warmly and began a simple conversation. The stranger spoke about life, missed opportunities, and the importance of telling people how much they matter before time quietly steals the chance away. The biggest regrets, the man said softly, are usually not the mistakes we make. They're the words we never say and the love we never have the courage to express. Those words settled deep inside your soulmate's heart. It felt as though life itself had chosen that exact moment to remind them what truly mattered. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. That night, after returning home, they stood beneath the stars for a long time. The world was silent except for the gentle wind moving through the trees. They closed their eyes and allowed every memory of you to return without resistance. They remembered the way you believed in them during moments when they doubted themselves. They remembered your patience during difficult seasons. They remembered how you celebrated even their smallest victories as though they were something extraordinary. They finally understood that genuine love had never asked them to be perfect. It had only asked them to be honest. As the night grew darker, they whispered something they had never admitted before. The truth is, I never stopped caring. Those simple words echoed through the silence. There was no audience. No friends nearby. No one to impress. Only one heart finally choosing complete honesty. In that quiet moment, they realized that pretending to be over someone had required far more energy than simply accepting what they truly felt. The walls they had spent years building began to crumble, replaced by a peaceful sense of freedom. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The following morning, they woke with a different outlook on life. Instead of wondering whether they could rewrite the past, they began focusing on writing a better future. They became intentional with every conversation, more patient with every relationship, and more grateful for every ordinary day. They discovered that personal growth isn't measured by dramatic moments. It is built through small daily choices that slowly transform the heart. Every act of kindness, every honest apology, and every moment of humility became another step toward becoming the person they had always wanted to be. Meanwhile, your own life continued blossoming in beautiful ways. You had stopped waiting for life to return to what it once was. Instead, you embraced the person you were becoming. Your confidence no longer depended on someone else's attention. Your peace no longer depended on unanswered questions. You had learned to find joy in the present, appreciating each sunrise, each opportunity, and each lesson that shaped your journey. Without realizing it, you had become the kind of person whose quiet strength inspired everyone around you. Listen carefully because this changes everything. One afternoon, your soulmate looked at their reflection and smiled. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because they finally recognized themselves again. They were no longer the person controlled by fear, hesitation, or regret. They had become someone willing to speak honestly, love sincerely, and accept whatever tomorrow might bring with courage instead of anxiety. That transformation became their greatest achievement. As another sunset painted the sky with golden light, they realized something remarkable. The greatest gift you had ever given them wasn't a memory, a conversation, or even the relationship itself. It was the example of what authentic love looks like. You had shown them that love is patient without being weak, honest without being cruel, strong without becoming controlling. That lesson would remain with them for the rest of their life, no matter where the future eventually led. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the moment when an unexpected encounter forces both hearts to confront everything they have learned. The journey is no longer about looking backward with regret. It is about stepping forward with wisdom, gratitude, and hope. Sometimes life surprises us not by changing the past, but by giving us the courage to create a future that is kinder, healthier, and more meaningful than we ever imagined possible. And that new beginning is closer than either heart realizes. Love found its way home. My beloved child, don't skip. Stay till the very end because this is the moment every chapter has been leading toward. What happened next changed everything. After months of unanswered questions, quiet tears, late-night memories, and silent prayers, both hearts finally arrived at a place they had never reached before, not perfection, but peace. The storms that once seemed impossible to survive had slowly shaped both of you into stronger, wiser, and more compassionate people. Looking back, neither of you recognized the people you used to be. The pain had not defeated you. It had transformed you. One crisp morning, your soulmate woke before sunrise with an overwhelming feeling they could no longer ignore. For the first time, there was no fear in their heart. No pride standing in the way. No excuses left to hide behind. They looked out the window as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon and quietly smiled. They finally understood that love is not about holding on out of desperation. It is about showing up with honesty, respect, patience, and gratitude. That realization filled their heart with a peace they had searched for in so many other places but had never truly found. Listen carefully. This changes everything. They no longer wanted to prove anything. They no longer wanted to convince anyone that they had changed. Instead, they simply chose to live differently. Every conversation became more thoughtful. Every promise became more meaningful. Every act of kindness became intentional. They realized that true love is not demonstrated through dramatic words but through consistent actions, quiet loyalty, and the willingness to grow together through every season of life. Meanwhile, your own journey had become a beautiful testimony of resilience. The person who once questioned their worth had discovered a confidence that no disappointment could take away. You had learned to protect your peace without closing your heart. You had forgiven without forgetting the lessons. You had loved without losing yourself. Every difficult chapter had quietly prepared you to recognize healthy love built on trust, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. You were no longer searching for someone to complete you because you had already found strength within yourself. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. When your paths crossed again, there were no dramatic speeches and no impossible promises. There was simply honesty. Two people looked into each other's eyes and saw not the mistakes of the past, but the growth that had come from them. They spoke openly about their fears, their regrets, and everything they had learned while walking separate roads. The conversation lasted for hours, yet it felt as though no time had passed at all. Every word built a bridge where silence had once created distance. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Neither of you rushed to define the future. Instead, you agreed to let trust grow naturally, one day at a time. You laughed together again. You shared simple conversations that once seemed impossible. You celebrated small victories, comforted one another through difficult moments, and discovered that genuine love becomes stronger when it is built on truth instead of assumptions. The relationship that slowly emerged was different from the one you once knew. It was calmer, healthier, and rooted in mutual understanding rather than fear. As the seasons changed, both of you realized that the greatest miracle was never the reunion itself. The miracle was the transformation that happened before it. Without the months apart, neither of you would have become the people capable of protecting the love you now shared. Every tear had carried a lesson. Every lonely night had strengthened your character. Every unanswered question had quietly prepared your hearts for a future built on wisdom instead of emotion alone. Listen carefully because this is the message you are meant to remember. Life has a remarkable way of using even the hardest moments to shape something beautiful. Sometimes love asks us to wait. Sometimes it asks us to grow. Sometimes it asks us to let go of pride so we can hold on to what truly matters. Whatever path life places before you, never stop choosing honesty, kindness, and hope. Those qualities never lose their value. My beloved child, as this story gently comes to an end, the sun sets on the old chapter and rises on a brand new beginning. There is no longer fear between two hearts, only understanding. There is no longer regret, only gratitude for every lesson that led you here. There is no longer silence, only conversations filled with sincerity and respect. The future is no longer something to fear because both of you have learned that real love is not about finding perfect people. It is about two imperfect people choosing each other with open hearts, every single day. Thank you for staying until the very end. Remember this, the most unforgettable love stories are not written by fate alone. They are written by courage, forgiveness, patience, and the willingness to grow through every challenge life brings. No matter what tomorrow holds, never lose faith in the power of kindness, never underestimate the strength of an honest heart, and never forget that every ending can become the beginning of something even more beautiful. As the final page closes, both hearts walk forward, not with fear of the future, but with hope, wisdom, and a love that has finally found its way home.